I have just spent almost an hour and a half with Steve for this our third conversations. And it is December 29th when we're recording this, so it's just before New Year's, and we speak a little bit about our intentions for the upcoming year. That, for me, started already on December 21st, the day of the winter solstice. My thing is bubbles, and Steve's thing is stepping stones, and there's quite a lot of eh, crossover between those, and then also really different aspects to them. But regardless, there's a lot of creativity going on in this conversation. So I hope you enjoy. Good
I'm,
morning. It is like really super early at your place.
yes, it's still completely black outside.
Wow.
So yeah, my body just wakes up at 4:30, 5 o'clock, 3:30 sometimes. That's really annoying when it does that. So I have to go to bed really early because if I don't, I just don't get enough sleep. So my family knows that, I try to go to bed around 9,
Mm.
which is pretty early. There's a lot of things I can't do after dinner.
But so then that makes you what? You get 7, 8 hours of sleep?
Yeah,
7?
if I can actually fall asleep at 9 and wake at 5, I'll get 8. Most nights I get somewhere between
7-ish.
6.5 and 7.5 is more like it. So, and
Mhm.
that's really still not enough. I really do much better if I get 8. If I
Mm.
get 8 hours of sleep, like 5 nights in a row, I can tell there's just
Really?
more. Yeah, I just have more energy.
Mhm.
Things are clearer. It's like there's a bit of a fog in your head if you're not getting enough sleep, and you get used to that after a while, I find.
Mm.
And then you don't notice or realize that that's not
Y
normal, that it doesn't
Yeah,
have to
it
be
turns
like
in
that.
you into your baseline.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is normal, but not natural,
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
it does
Yeah, I
turn
mean,
into the normal for you. That's why you
yeah.
don't notice it.
Yeah, and if we didn't have lights, we're kind of forced to sleep most of the time when it was dark, we would be getting a lot more sleep.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
and I often wonder what we would be like if we got all that sleep, if we got
Yeah,
10,
and
11 hours.
was it in, I listened to Wintering by what's her name? Um, Kate Kate well, whatever. Wintering. Um Where there's one chapter where she speaks about sleep, and she speaks about the old days where you would basically wake up maybe a little bit earlier than what you wake up, and you would have a couple of hours to, talk, to make love, to go visit the neighbors in the dark, but do that thing, and then after 2, 3 hours, you'd fall asleep again and sleep for another 2, 3 hours.
Huh. Mm.
Yep.
And I remember there's a chapter in The Wind in the Willows
Mhm.
where the mole and the rat discover Badger's back door in a snowstorm. It's the rescue of them. They're about to be, frozen to death in the woods. And they find Badger's back door by accident and get let in. And then there's this discussion just through the natural conversation around what Badger's life is like in the wintertime, about the animal's seasonal cycle and the fact that there's lots of sleeping and not a lot of talking with each other. And it's a very downtime during the winter because it offsets the summer, which in latitudes like yours is extreme. The days are extremely long and it's exhausting. By the time you get to the end of the summer, you're tired out in a kind of stretched out sort of way
Yeah.
because there's just been so much going on. And that's what they describe as the lives of the animals. And there's so much doing and gathering and running away from and all the,
Yeah.
and it's offset by the winter where there's just lots of sleeping,
Yeah. Yeah.
recharging all batteries for the
Yeah.
next year. We
And
don't
it
do it.
is no, and I think that that's kind of the whole premise of the book Wintering is just this, we need to be mindful of the winter. We need to be mindful of our personal winters, which can take place even during summer,
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily linked
Yeah.
to seasons, but definitely the seasonal aspect of life is quite, we've again, there is another piece of piece of nature that we humans have kind of stepped away from, as if we are not part of nature and
Right.
subject to the laws of nature as everything else is. It's like, that is just so conceited. It is just so weird.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just another part of the weird way that we remove ourselves, you know? Um, or I mean, I'm reading Pema Chodron's book, um, Living Beautifully,
Hmm.
which is about I mean, it's basically about breaking down your self-identity, your fixed identity, as she calls it, right? And letting the natural mysteriousness and the natural, much larger reality that is us kind of emerge. And she says that the good news is that the most mundane things, the most absolutely ordinary things in our actual immediate experience are the door into that. We just have to pay complete attention to them,
Mm.
right? So once again, I'm confronted with mindfulness as a tool, as a door, as a way of kind of reconnecting to that larger who we are. And it's just it's just amazing to me how much effort and work we put into creating this box around ourselves that we define ourselves with, and we desperately need and want it, to have these boundaries, because it's almost as if without the boundaries we wouldn't exist or something. Um, in the visual art world, it would be the equivalent of you can't paint anything without drawing a thick outline around it first with a big fat magic
Mm.
marker, right? And then you can say that you've got that shape. And that's not how it really works, and it's not how the most dynamic painting is created. It's painted with, it's better when the colors actually juxtapose, or when they blend into each other in places, or edges get lost, right? And it's true for us too, but we try very hard to have a really tight outline around ourselves.
And it's interesting. I have been um in Dominic sessions, therapy sessions with Dominic for the past, well, 3 times, maybe 4 times. The I came to this realization that I haven't been writing as much as I usually write. I haven't been writing down the sessions. I usually do that. I've just jotted down notes, and usually I kind of type it out, right? Or flesh it out. I haven't done that. And we came to this, kind of mutual agreement that, yeah, because I haven't been as present to me because I've been working quite a lot. So there's that. I have to come home to me first and be with me first for a period of time. Then I can do that type of writing, which isn't, it's not surface level writing, it's deep
Mm-mm.
stuff, right? And the session after, I came to him kind of realizing that I'm 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 a very dependable person to others. People can depend on me. My clients can depend on me. I will do the job. I will shuffle things around. I will meet the deadline. I will get it done. I will squeeze them in. I'll be there, which means I am not dependable at all to myself. I'm totally non dependable to me, which is, yeah, that's why I haven't been writing for these past 2.5 months, right? Because I've been so dependable to others, which then had him ask me, what if you weren't dependable? And I just blanked. It's like,
Uh-huh.
I don't know what's on the other side of that. If I remove that filter, who the fuck am I? It's like really a scary feeling that
Yeah.
I don't know. I do not know who I am if the people that I serve in a professional or in a, private personal fashion, if I wasn't dependable, if they couldn't depend on me, who the fuck am I? just a scary void, just really, really scary, just a blank. Normally, there's something coming. There's a sense, a sensation, a feeling, a color. Just blank. It's like frozen void. It's like, ah, really, really scary. Um, a scary experience for me because I'm not used to not having a clue to that extent. I've gotten a lot better at, playing with the unknown and being in the unknown. But this unknown was just there was nothing. I guessing it's probably a bit like snow blindness,
Yeah.
where you just it's just gone. You don't see a thing. There is nothing you can latch onto. Just
Right.
blank. It's like shit. Um. So I still haven't. I haven't gotten a sense of what that me without dependable could be. I don't know. Scary.
Other people are not dependable. You know, probably a number of people who are not dependable. It probably drives you actually a little crazy, I'm assuming, because it sounds like it would be the thing you would maybe even most be irritated about other people is them not being dependable, which is another measure maybe of the back, right? That's your
Absolutely.
that's maybe one of your core, if not your very core value of how you define yourself or how you
Yeah.
find yourself valuable. And so therefore when others are not that way, it's like, how could you not do that?
Yeah.
That's the most basic thing.
And for me, it centers around if you say you do it, you do it. And if you cannot do it for some reason, then you say that you can't do it. You just don't pretend like nothing ever happened. And that was the
Yeah.
story of my first husband. When we broke up and he said this and then he just wouldn't do the fucking thing. And it just drove me crazy because of that. He's not dependable. He says he will and then just pretends it's never happened. He's never said it. He's never promised. Yeah, drove me absolutely bonkers. Because it is so far from me. It is so
Right.
far from me.
Right.
It's like, it's the very, very opposite of what I am, how I define myself.
How
So,
are they
yeah,
defined then? Our family is often feels at a disadvantage in the world because we are quieter and more likely to consider other people's needs or wants than our own, which is somewhat similar to what you're talking about, right? So we will naturally not make noise, not impose ourselves on others, not take up much space, and so on, because we're always extremely conscious of everybody else and what they need or what they
mhm,
think they want, whatever. I do it to a fault in trying to make sure everybody else is happy or everybody else is okay or whatever. That's one of my problems that I carry to the point where I'm erasing me. And worse, erasing my family. That's when it really gets bad is when I'm doing it in a way that actually starts affecting them. Um, but I look around and I realize other people take up space. Other people frankly slop themselves all over other people's stuff and space and everything else and don't even seem to notice. They're just genuinely okay with just being and doing whatever and not being overly conscious of whether it's inconvenient for someone else at all. And I look at that and I think that must be so freeing, so you know, mind-bogglingly. I don't know. The word that comes to mind is childish, and I mean it almost, and I do mean it in a derogatory way in some ways. It's like, come on, grow up. There's other people in the world, right? But there's just something very appealing about not having to worry so much about it. And it just makes me realize that I'm missing balance there, which is, I guess, what you're talking about too with the whole dependable thing, right? If you're being so dependable to everybody else, always at the expense of yourself, you know. And I guess these come up against perfectionism, which is another issue, um, where in order to have a perfect score on your dependability for others, you're willing to take a zero on your own. it shouldn't it shouldn't be like that. That's like way too so mm,
Yeah, it is. It is sort of going to the extremes. Um, like you say, in a way that actually is at the expense of me.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it's like this isn't the first time I've discovered this. This isn't the first time this insight, the dependable and that thing that was the first that word and the way that felt, but this aspect of working so much that I don't have energy for anything else. I mean, that's been going on for decades, And I come to the realization and I've experimented with, blocking hours in my calendar where it's just for me time. I had days it was like, okay, I won't schedule anything on Mondays and Fridays or Thursdays or whatever it was. But then client comes knocking saying, "Could you have a meeting on Monday?" And I'd go, "Yeah, sure." Right? So I would constantly not honor the me time. So it's like yeah, I think it's time for me to put on those glasses again. I'm really good at sort of deciding on something and then I put on the glasses. So I need to put on glasses of me time where I actually did that this week. I was supposed to meet a friend for lunch the week before Christmas, but they got sick, and so we postponed it. And it's like he texted at the beginning of this week asking when can we do it. So I started to look at my Thursday of this week. It's Wednesday today because it's a blank day, and I went, no. I won't suggest Thursday. I need those blank days, you know? So, no. So I suggested yesterday and this afternoon, and it'll probably be in the beginning of January. Um, but that isn't easy for me to
Uh-uh,
do that, to honor
uh-uh,
me that way. Um, It is much easier to say, "I can squeeze you in here, here, or here,"
mhm,
and then I just fill my days with other people, and I love other people,
mhm.
you know?
You do?
That's one of the problems, I love other people,
Yeah,
and I need my me time.
yeah, yeah. Mm. I was thinking just before this call about the way you and I are, and many of the folks, of course, in our creative community too, right, are all on various kinds of creative journeys, and they're journeys of self discovery and self exploration as much as they are anything, right? Maybe more than they are anything. And I was thinking about the serendipity,
Mm,
things that sort of just put themselves in front of us because you're looking, you find, right? And I don't know how that works. I don't need to know how that works. Right. It's just good that it does. But I was thinking this morning about how the fact that when you and I get together and have these conversations, or when I have conversations like this with anyone, um, my serendipity is like, in one direction and your serendipity is in another direction. And for a brief period of time, there's this intersection where they're
yeah,
crossing and we're comparing notes. And there's an opportunity for the things that you are finding and discovering to have an impact on me and vice versa. And it's almost like the moments in a plaid like this, where the two colors cross and you get this interesting section where
yeah,
there's, everything's going on because both colors are there. And that's what's fascinating, I think, about this kind of conversation, this kind of very self-aware conversation. Not just self-aware in terms of being aware of ourselves, but also that meta step where you step above it and you're able to look at it and chronicle what's going on, put it into words, and therefore package it up for someone else to understand or see.
yeah,
Um, and I was just, you know, that's part of what's fascinating about the posting we do on in the community is that there's all these things other people are doing that either ring a bell for me or remind me of something, or, it's just that many more opportunities for serendipity.
Yeah. And it is that the metaphor of weave and weaving has been very, very present in my life ever since I did the creative workshop in the spring of 2020. Um, Starting with these dailies of sharing a daily in one of these forums, and how it weaves, how there's, someone introduces some little ingredient in a sense. It can be a word, it can be a painting, it could be a music, it could be anything, a question, or a haiku. Haiku started in the creative community a year ago, and then just they just kind of spread and popped up everywhere. And it's like
Mhm.
it is so fascinating to like both be a part of it in the sense that I am also influencing, but also be a part of it in the sense that I'm also being influenced. So it's like it's a both and. Yes, I'm influencer and I'm influenced, and then I can influence because of what I've been influenced with. It's like, so it's just a fascinating, very, very organic process.
Mhm.
Um, that I mean, that's one of the things that makes me so aware of the fact that I need the me time,
Yeah.
because there is so much, just so rich stuff going on. There's so much around me, and it needs to, be processed and digested and refurbished. And
Yeah.
some pieces I defecate, and some pieces turn into little molecules that are just what this cell needed at this moment. It's like, so it's,
Yeah.
again, it's a very, very organic process, and it is amazing to be a part of something
Yeah.
like this.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been trying to think of ways to understand maybe how we are. I mean, if we're not if we don't have a fixed boundary, right? If we're not as simple as, I'm this thing that takes up this corporeal space. If I'm more than that, which firmly believe we are, though we're often unable to apprehend more than this, what is our existence really like if it goes, you know, blending off in all directions to
Mm.
other people and other things, the past, the future? I'm pretty sure our understanding of time is probably pretty warped by our very limited way of perceiving it. That it's actually something probably quite different than the way we experience it. Um, and I've come up. The only analogy I've been able to come up with is that we're like the little cap of foam on the top of a wave.
Mm.
You know, we're just it bobs up for a moment. It has this little cap of white foam on the top of it for a bit, and we're sort of that point of view, that perspective, that whatever. But where's the edge of it, right? A
Yeah.
wave is blends off into all different directions, and so again, in line with weaving, or the intersection of the serendipity, waves will cross each other and create these very interesting nodes and patterns where they're intersecting. And when you have an interaction with someone, especially an aware interaction like this one, there's so much going on and so much opportunity to, once you've passed through it, this moment, this experience, you're changed,
Yeah.
right? By what was going on in the other person's
Yeah. Yeah.
experience. And it happens even if you're not aware, right? You don't have to be self-aware or meta about it at all. All the interactions we have with each other just do this.
Yeah.
And then you're right. There's the time that you need to be by yourself, just you and the wind, to build the next level or more of that froth on top, right?
Speaking of froth and going off on a totally different tangent, do you see the bears in the back?
I do.
You do. And
Yeah.
I've been wondering how I should refurnish in here so that the bear doesn't have this pillar in the middle of them
Hole
because
down
they're
the middle of his
so
head.
cool. Yeah. So it's like, because I don't think I can take this
Um,
room divider down because this is actually a bearing wall, I
that's
think.
what I figured. That's probably why that
So
pole is
it's
there,
like,
right?
nah, it's a little bit, but I do
Yeah,
love them.
yeah.
Um,
It was great to see it there when you first came out. I was like, "Oh, there they are.
yeah, there they are.
Cool."
Yeah.
Yeah, and
It,
also talking about froth, you know, your bubbles idea, right?
well, I do.
Yeah, that's I think that's great. And, you know, I was thinking about that too. And, for me, the stepping stones is the analogy I'm using, but I think they're actually a little bit similar,
Yeah.
right? Because they're both about one of the notes I wrote when I was going back through all my last 9 months worth of journals and kind of summarizing some of the stuff I learned and found out in them. One of the things that comes up over and over again is this whole idea of the second attention that, was it Arthur Mandel? Yeah,
Mhm.
talks about. Um, that to me is that awareness that there's something more going on. There's a moment to pay attention to here, and it's the way you look or listen or whatever. It's not exactly looking or listening, but it sort of feels like sort of like those. And I think that's what you're talking about, maybe,
Yeah.
or part of what you're talking about with the bubbles, right? And paying attention to what's emerged, what's coming up,
What's coming? Yeah. Yeah.
right?
And
And
it has been so interesting to notice because the year that's just been, my intention for the year was to listen um, to all of me and then act. And throughout a lot of this year, in sessions with Dominic, absolutely, but also in other, you know, all sorts of situations, really. This very physical sensation of bubbles up my yoni coming from my root chakra. It's like it's bubbles and I can feel them. It's like it's hard to ignore because it's as if somebody's champagneing you, right? It's like it really is that sensation. So again, a couple of sessions ago, it was like, it's the bubbles again. And that is the intention for this coming year. It is the bubbles because they have been they are one of the, I get heart palpitations now and again, or I can notice myself stopping breathing, holding my breath.
mhm.
Or I get the little nervous ticks in my eyelids, which is usually more of a stress indicator. And so it's like there are different physical sensations, but the bubble by far is the one that's most prevalent and the one that's hardest for me to ignore. So it was like, okay, yeah, I'll be going with the bubbles for the next year to see what is there because it is again this they can come up in any type of situation, whether it be
Look,
you need to get on this thing because this is really good, or you need to think a bit here, lady. Maybe you shouldn't. So it's like, it's not as if they always say, go for it. Not at all. It's just, there's something here you need to pay attention to. And don't try to figure it out. Sense it, you know. So again, following the bubbles is yeah, it feels interesting. Mm. to to allow that to be kind of the guide for this year. Because it's like I can't make them come. That
oh,
does not work.
oh,
Not at
oh,
all. But they come. So I'm quite, it's fun. It feels fun.
uh-huh.
Um and when I wrote the piece that I wrote yesterday and sent it out sort of a week after I was supposed to do it if I had been dependable. And I went on a mini rebellion last week, going, no, I won't do this then. Um, so when I wrote it down, this feeling of, I don't know if I'm describing this in a way that anybody can relate to it, or if I will just come off as completely off the bend, off my rocker, crazy. So when I posted it in the creative community and I got yours and others' feedback, it was like, okay, it does make sense.
Mhm.
It's not. I'm not the only one who can sort of see this. It does make sense. So that was kind of a bit, um, validating in that sense where I know it, and it's kind of neat to know that others know it too.
Yeah.
Rather than, "I need you to know it too, because otherwise I won't believe it." It's like, "No, I know this, but it's nice to be in company." Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I think also there's a need to figure out which things are things we're sort of making up or wishful thinking, as opposed to the things that are unfamiliar enough that they feel like they could be that, but are actually not that. They truly are something real, just not real in a way that our civilization normally defines it. And so there's a need, since we're going kind of against the grain of our civilization in this way of thinking about what is and isn't, or what matters. Um, and we're grappling with things that are more mysterious, more slippery. It's important to have someone else along with you that goes, "Oh yeah, 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 I see that too." I mean, to a large extent, the way we define everything we define in the civilization we have is this joint set
yeah.
of conventions that we literally force on each other on a regular basis in order to reinforce it for ourselves, right? To some extent, what we're doing is trying to dismantle some of that. And so, but we're not the kind of animal, the kind of mind that can do that completely solo. At least not most of us. We
I
have
would
to have
I
that
would say
validation.
none of us actually. I because I do believe that that is one of the things about humans, if I'm not sure that we can call what we are or have become successful, but in a sense, we are successful, even though it might be actually at the price of ourselves. Um, but it is because we do work best together.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I think that type of validation is uh is important. And there's actually a thread in the creative community about this that we might have had before you stepped into the community, where we spoke about this, the need for validation and what that means and how you can look at it from different
Yeah.
aspects. um
I think sanity is actually tied up with this, right? I mean, the not only do we feel sane because we're validated, I suspect we are only sane because we're validated. We need each other, nestling up against each other. Like, trees in a forest, we grow in a way that we support each other and need each other in order to be able to deal with the wind and whatever else.
yeah,
Controlling where the rain goes when it falls, all that. A tree by itself out on a hillside has got a completely different kind of life. I think there maybe are some individuals who are
yeah,
able to do that, but I think they're incredibly rare,
yeah, I
and they
think so
often
too.
don't look sane to the rest of us because their experience is so different. But so for most of us, we need the validation in order to be able to make the journey and, not only feel sane, but I think be sane.
Yeah, which is it is interesting then when you look at how we live our lives. Sweden, I think, is one of the countries where there are most single households. There's like, I don't know, 55% of all Swedish households is like single
One person.
people, one
Oh,
person households. Um, and it's like, I can totally understand it from one angle because shit, it's nice to be on your own. because you don't have to bother about, rubbing up against somebody else who has a completely different viewpoint on what's clean and what's not clean, what's good food, when should you eat it, how long do you sleep, what's loud noises, what all of that stuff, right?
Yep.
And at the very same time, I think we're supposed to be together to rub off on each other because that is how we as a species survive. Let's put it that way,
Mm.
at least. If everybody were these kind of maybe a little bit not so sane lone trees, as a species, it would, if that turned into the majority, then we would be headed down the path of like self-extinction, which we kind of are now maybe anyway, but on completely different for completely different reasons. Um, but it's interesting because they've found that in forests, they have found that there are these trees that really don't contribute a lot of nutrients to this mycelial network and that don't take that much either. And then there are these node trees that are just, it's like a
Mother trees.
constant, the mother trees where it's just massive. And the mother tree has, there's at least one little mycelial thread going to the loner trees. But they are left to be loner trees as long as we have this little feather of kind of just checking in.
Are you there? Are
Are
you
you there?
okay?
Yes, you're there. Then it's fine, right? And probably if that tree starts to get bad, the mother tree will probably send a little bit extra nutrients that way, just to make sure that you will stay well. Uh, but if all the trees in the forest were like that, it wouldn't work.
No, no, not like it does, right?
No,
And what's funny is we thought the forest was like that.
the forest was like
Before we discovered all the connections and all the interplay and all the chemicals going back and forth between these trees, even
that.
across species lines. We just
Yeah,
assumed it was not like that. We assumed
yeah,
it was competitive and not cooperative. We assume,
yeah. Assumptions are the mother of all fuck ups. That's one of my
yes, yes,
mantras that I say over and over again, especially in projects that I'm working with. Assumptions are the mother of all fuck ups. So how can I speak clearer? How can I
right,
pick up on my own assumptions and actually
right,
ask the question to get it validated instead? Or no, oh shit, good thing I asked,
right.
you know?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
but yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens with it. Yeah. But what about your stepping stones?
So they're different in one really principal way from your bubbles. They occasionally they present themselves, but that's not normally how that works for me. The stepping stones for me are I have to take the step. They're not like coming for me. I have to go for them.
Mhm.
So, and that's the thing. It's like stepping out off the edge and then it'll be there. So in a little bit, it is like leap the net will appear kind of thing. Each one of them. And so that's what I'm being challenged with. And as we've talked about before, the body is the really large part of how this works. Where the stone is, how the stone gets stepped onto is largely about nonverbal things for me. Um, in my interior work, I was I've been visiting this interior space, which has an incredible amount of definition around it. There are very specific places. I could almost paint them. They're so real. Um, and there's a geography. I could draw a map of parts of this. I have, resisted the temptation to try to lay down any kind of cartography of this, in part because I think I'm not supposed to be thinking of it that way. But there's definitely, I know that if I'm in this place and I turn left out of here and walk down the hill, I'll end up at, it's just, and some of the places reconnect to each other in ways that don't make sense spatially at all, but are still real. I could take that path again, even though it doesn't make any sense. I would still arrive at the same place. So it's very interesting. But one of the things I discovered about 2 months ago was that there was a whole half of this place that I was blissfully unaware of and had not ever stepped into. And not only had I not ever stepped into it, I hadn't even really been noticing or thinking about the fact that I was only on one half, that the whole other
So,
half was just
did
not.
you know that there was a hole?
Nope. I mean, I
No,
assumed there was a hole, but I assumed that the half I was on was the hole.
was the hole. Precisely.
And that's not the way it was at all. And then I finally was confronted with this other whole half. And I mean, it runs right down through one of the most important and central places in this interior space. It's right there.
Mm.
And I mean, I just, if I went back through my notes, I would notice that I'm always talking to people on the left at the table, always talking to people on the left of the table, never on the
Mm.
right-hand side to me of this table. I never had conversations over there. One or two people maybe showed up on that side, shadows showed up on that side for a conversation, always on the left. And it was like, nope, leave the Meads Grove and it's off, going off always to the left. And I just never noticed. And then I finally was confronted with, turn this way. What's through the trees this way? And what it was a place that's completely dark. There was almost no light over there at all. And it was very difficult to even push in through the barrier of the space and get into it. And what I've discovered is the time I'm now spending over there, because it's also got a geography and it's also got places. I've buried the things I've buried the deepest over there. And that space doesn't work with words.
Mm.
The space I've been excavating and working with, I could describe, I could have conversations, I could be told things. It's often in words.
Mm.
The darker side, nope. If I go recover something, there will be these actions that take place. I can describe what's going on, but I get no explanations. I don't know what I just did. I don't know why that worked. I don't know how that's reintegrating me or how I'm recovering a part of myself that I deliberately buried or lost. I have no idea. You know, I'll be just confronted with a thing which I realize I'm supposed to eat, or something will simply get put inside something else. Like, that was supposed to be in there now, and now that it's back in there where it belongs. Or these two things are joined together in a way that, they should have been together all along. Or this thing is brought out of some space into the rest of it, which converts into something else and flies off and does. But there's never any words. There's never any explanation.
Mm.
It's just, it's more visceral than that. It's more body.
Mm. It feels transformational. It feels, or
It
maybe
is.
even transmutational. The way how um dragonfly,
Yeah.
when they go down, it's actually a transmutation going on. You get
Yeah.
different DNA structure coming out as a dragonfly than what you had coming in as a
It's larva.
larvae or whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, so it's not even just transformation, it's
Right.
transmutation. It's down on cellular level. There's shifts going on. And it's just, whoa.
Yes. And again, this body thing, probably 6 or 7 years ago, we were on a vacation and I felt the very uncharacteristic urge for me to go out in the dark late at night. I think the rest of the family was already asleep. And I ran in place in the dark.
You
I
stood
just, I
still,
just,
ran
I
running.
power ran. I power ran in place in the dark, to the dark, at the dark, and got a very strong image in mind when I did that, which I then turned into a mask, because it's a mask. And it's a mask that's shaped like a Kenyan shield,
Mhm.
like a
Mhm.
lozenge shield, points on top and bottom, split in half. One half is black with one white spot. The other half is white with one black spot. So it's very much like a yin yang, but it's not shaped like that. right? But it has this element of the dark and the light. Um, and I made it, and it's in the wall here in the studio, and but I had no idea what it was. And then in the work that I've been doing with the light and the dark half, on the dark side, again, most of the people I meet don't have names, but there's one that's one of the primary guides there, and it's my inner face. That's what he calls himself or has allowed me to call him. And he's the one that pointed out to me that what I'm now doing is exploring the dark side of that mask, that mask is my interior space or a
Yeah.
representation of it.
Mm.
And I was like, all right, so am I trying to recover the light stuff that's over here isolated in this dark half and move it back over to the light, and the dark thing, you put it back over? He's like, no, no, no. You're not moving things around. You're reintegrating or reconnecting them, but they'll still stay separate. They have their separate functions. They do their separate things. The dark side is a place I should spend more time in because there's things for me to learn there. And when I first got there, it was cold and creepy and weird. And I've come to actually love that side and love the experiences I have there and the feeling of it over the last couple of months. So I realized that I now find I need the time over there. And that's kind of new. But
Mm.
again, to do anything over there or even to get there, I often have to do something physical. Frequently I have to dance here in the studio. I dance here in the studio, which is hard because the studio is the open space is 5 feet wide and 8 feet long, 9 feet long. That's it. It's not very big to dance in, especially difficult to twirl, which I was told point blank, no, dude, you got to twirl. And I'm like, I get dizzy.
Yeah. But it's fun how there's like these, I don't know, adventures that we can go on, these explorations, etc. I woke up this morning, or rather, I fell asleep a little bit before midnight. I dreamt a very specific dream. I kind of woke up thinking, I don't want to turn on the light and jot this down. So I kind of went over the dream over again to make sure that when I wake up, I'll remember it. I think I then fell asleep again and kind of had a second add on to it. Woke up again thinking it's probably 6 or 7 by now. It was 5:07, which for me is early. Um, but he was like, okay. So I came downstairs, grabbed my iPad, sat up in bed, and jotted down the dream or the two halves of this dream. But the interesting thing about this is I occasionally and repeatedly have this dream of not getting there, not getting to the bus, not being able to get on the train, or whatever it is. I'm walking, and I just won't ever get there. And it's a really frustrating feeling. I wake up with frustration just coursing through my body, right? In this dream, I was both on a train and in a parking garage, the way that you can be in dreams. And I had this neon pink chair that I needed to deliver. And in the parking garage, here comes my one of my clients who's hired me for a project. He comes and he's so thrilled to see me carrying this chair because this is the thing that he's been, looking for. So I deliver the chair to him, thinking or feeling inside of my dream that, wow, here's a dream where I come to the end. So it's so funny how in my dream body state, I'm aware of the fact that usually in this dream body state, this doesn't happen, but
Right.
this time it did happen.
Right,
So
right.
it's just like multiple levels of consciousness or awareness that are just playing with each other. And it was, just it's fascinating how I could wake up just going, because this is the thing. This was when I woke up. I wanted to remember the fact that here was one of these potentially endless dreams that had me hand over this chair and I was done. Um, and I was like, What is that all about?" I have no idea, but it's great fun.
Right,
Uh,
right.
and it's like I sent the little story to Dominic, so I'm sure that we will be going over it to see if there's something there because it's
Yeah.
that kind of turns into another level of awareness or consciousness, which isn't maybe it is part sense making, but it is also kind of mark making. It is
Yeah.
finding, it's like, okay, here's the pink chair, and here's the garage, and there was loss. And, it's like jotting it down in a sense that, I don't know, it feels, I feel like it gives me something. There's value to it,
Mhm.
even when I don't know what the value is. I don't have
Yes.
to know what the value is.
Yes.
There is value, period.
Yes.
Um,
For those of us who are always looking to find the meaning in everything, we're always trying to map the experience onto something we can then write down or whatever. Um, and there's this urge also to make sense of everything,
mhm,
to
precisely.
finally get the whole thing, the whole picture, to finish the map. I don't think that's what's supposed to be going on. I mean, or at least that's not the only thing going on, right? And that's basically what I've been told about these two halves and about the experience I spent. I've been, I started my IFS work, my internal family systems work. I started doing this journaling with the intent of trying to reintegrate myself, realizing that there were just things I had suppressed and lost and wasn't operating with, right? There were parts of me that I needed and wanted for my art and for my family life and for my own happiness. So I went looking for them, thinking I was going to make myself somehow whole, but this was some sort of a project you could finish. And not only is it not a project you could finish, but it's not meant to be. It's it's the idea you just used of making marks, I think is really a good one, especially for someone like me, right? With my particular art, right? So the idea that what this is just making connections, drawing connections. There isn't there isn't some map I'm going to make. I'm not, it's like my brain cells. They're just there. They are where they are. The connections and joins between them are always being made and added to and continue to evolve. That's what's going on. The dark and the light halves are not going to be integrated. They're not going to be rearranged, but I'm connecting them. And I
Yeah.
only connect them and can only connect them by doing more of this doing. If I don't do it, they get disconnected again.
Mm.
It's like the connections are temporary, right? Um, so so again, it's like the stepping stones. They're not meant to be permanent paving or anything like
No,
that.
no.
They're only there long enough for my foot to be on them once.
Yes. Yeah. And then they
It's almost like they
disappear.
subside and go back under the water again as soon as I get off them.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's what it's supposed to be like.
And I mean, I think it's a little bit like driving a car or riding a bike or getting really fit. It's like once you have learned that, you can, not sit behind the wheel of a car for 20 years. And when you do, it will feel really weird at first, but it's there
Yeah.
so that you can access it. And
Yeah.
then if you do it more and more, yeah, it's easier, and
Yeah.
then you're there. It's like it's a little bit like that with these connections. It's like these parts of you. in my mind, in my head, it was connected. They have always been a part of you.
That's
It's
right.
like, oh yeah, I need to work the connections. I need to make sure that they're, strong and vibrant
Yes.
and alive, and replace ones that are falling apart or, dying off for some reason or
Yes.
another. Um, and if you stop doing the work, it will crumble and
It'll
fall, and
fray.
it will fray precisely. And then when you get, oh yeah, that you will, and quickly it will
Yeah.
be there
Yes.
again.
There's another deeper thing there though too, which is, for me, is realizing that I've been trying to make it now.
Mhm.
I've been doing this like it was a thing that I could make, that I could finish, that I could whatever. And it's not a now. It's a verb. It's by its very nature transient. It's not something that I finish or do. I mean, it is something I do. It's not something
Yeah.
I make.
Mhm.
And that's the difference. The thing that gets made or can get made, and this is what I'm busy trying to figure out how to hook up to it, is the art.
Yeah.
The art is, and this is something that I wrote in one of my recent posts. The art is reflected back into this world, this reality that we share, from that interior world, if I'm doing it enough. If I do
Mhm.
it enough, if I do it deeply enough, the images come clear enough that I can transcribe them here. Or I can begin to just put things on paper, not having any intention of illustrating or creating any particular image at all. And the same activity and sense, those same verbs that I've gotten used to doing, these very non-verbal things I do in this other space, will begin to allow me to shape what's going on the page so that it becomes something. And the two approaches both involve this kind of trust, this kind of nonverbal thing going on. And they both tap into some place that's not really visible, not with eyes anyway, visible. And that for me is the fascination. And most of my favorite images have come from there. When I began Pro Workshop 2, the workshop right after the one that you attended, right? Um, I was led early in that session to report that my goal for Pro 2 was to figure out how to paint more from the inner garden. I didn't really know what that meant or what I was really trying to do. And it's just become more and more clear the more I've actually tried doing it. And that's what this largely is. This is trying to paint or draw out of that space. So I find myself more and more not painting or drawing anything I actually see, right? I'm not representing anything out here at all. And instead I'm allowing things to come out of that interior. And I've learned these two different ways, at least so far, two different ways to accomplish that. Um, but it requires a lot of time spent doing the
Yeah.
interior work,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is
Which
what
then,
5 a.m. is good for.
yeah, yeah, and it is just that thing. It is like, yes, I have the same need for that me time,
Yep.
and when I don't give myself that, when I don't set life up in such a way that um, the connections start to fray, right?
Yeah.
And it is interesting to me because I can there's a very strong sense in me that the this creative me, this me time me that does the inner work, that does the reflection and the meta observations and all of that stuff is really, really crucial for the professional me, the one who's the dependable one. Because I am who I am and how I am at work, because of this.
Uh-huh.
It is a huge conduit of it's like as if this is the mother
Uh-huh.
tree. The creative aspect is the mother tree. That's where nutrients are gotten and received and transformed and whatnot. And it is shifted over to this professional me. So if I don't attend to the creative aspect of me, I can keep going because there's stored energy, there's stored nutrients, right?
For a while.
For a while, and then I will be depleted, and I won't be the dependable one. I won't be the one who I won't be as much value. I won't be as much of service that I want to be in the ways that I want to be, right? So it's really also for that aspect of me, the professional me, I need to tend to this. I need to be dependable to me. I need to depend on me giving myself this so that that other part of me can also, you know, be me showing up as my best.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. There's
and it's
also,
like I've come to this insight a gazillion times, but maybe
right?
now I'm saying it out loud in ways that I haven't really said it out loud before. So I'm hoping it will stay with me a little bit more. Um,
Yeah, that's what going back to the journals was like. It was like going back and
yeah,
realizing, "Oh, I've had this realization before. I've had this realization multiple times before." Um, so 2 things. First, the 2 pieces, the interior, you know, creating all the interior space in the you time, and the you for your clients and you for the outside world. And you need this to properly feed this,
mm,
to send energy to this. There's a direction goes back this way too. And that's what Julia Cameron refers to as artist dates. It's that time you need to spend on something seemingly maybe frivolous or whatever, but you need in the real world, you need to keep encountering new things, new,
mm,
shockingly, surprisingly, exciting things that are unexpected, because those moments, that feeling, those insights, those objects, whatever they are, right? The travel, or whatever it is. Of course, with COVID, it's kind of hard to do some of these things now, but those things feed that interior space. So for me, all those books I got for Christmas is one way that I could do
yeah,
that, because the books,
yes.
like I'm reading Matisse in Morocco right now. And first of all, I'm amazed at how many answers to some of my own personal artistic problems are in the first pages of this book. And I'm like, really? That's what he was doing? Really? That's how that works? So anyway, there's that. So that's one of the 2 things. The other one was, I'm not gonna remember what it was. Perhaps as it just slips away. You could feel it going away in your head. No, I don't remember what the other one was. I'll remember it later, maybe. Anyway, that back in the other direction thing is, you have to fill the well on both sides. And that's hard to remember. It's hard to remember to do it. Hard to
Yeah.
remember to spend the time to do it on both sides, but you really need to. Um, I wish I could remember the other one, because the other one was kind of a little bit more ridiculous. And ridiculous is so good. I love. Don't remember what it was. So I have a lot of mark making to do, and I have a lot of. It's funny how many different things have all been pointing in this direction too. I mean, I've been reading this book. Can you see it?
William Kentridge.
Yes,
No,
six
no,
drawing
it's
lessons.
the 6 drawing lessons.
6
Yeah.
drawing lessons. These are a group of lectures that he gave at Harvard.
Mhm.
He's a South African artist, Johannesburg, and the lectures are largely about how, in order to produce real art, you have to stay stupid. You have to give lots and lots of opportunity and time to things that are uncertain, and you have to constantly fight to keep enough room in the studio and yourself. But he mostly talks about in the studio. The studio is like an extension of his brain. It's an
Mm.
extension of him. And he uses the studio physically and otherwise. He circles the studio. He spends lots of time circling the studio. The studio is a large space that he can go round and round and round it. He said you have to build the energy around the original image and the impulse before the work will occur. So he's got this body thing going on too. It's not dance for him. It's these circlings, right? So, but there's this whole idea that you just make a lot of marks. You just, you don't, something will arise from it if you put in the time and spend the energy. And if you spend it without putting too much of your own will on it, you give it room to breathe. It can become something much more interesting. It gives, it invites the muse or invites, right, this energy from somewhere else. It may be just deeper within us. It may be from beyond us. You invite it in. And then
So is that a book that is like it is of worth for people who are artistic in the way you are making paintings or drawings or stuff? Or is it a book that is of use for someone like me who is much more of a verbal, a word artist?
what's interesting is how beautifully he manages to put all of this into words.
Mm.
And the lectures are online. You can actually see him, and you should, if you want to. If the book is a recapturing of writing down of the lectures themselves, but there is so much visual material that is part of,
Okay.
and in his case, a lot of it is animated. He produced lots of movies using paper and charcoal and other things. It's all stop action photography type animation, but it's done in ways that are not like anybody else does it. And during the lectures, you get to see these things being done or get to see bits and clips and pieces of them. So I would really advise, if you want to take them in, to do them, to watch them instead.
Watch
There
them.
are, I think, an hour long each, and there's six of them, six lectures, and they're marvelous. They, they let you step inside a highly creative mind, but also a mind that's able to verbalize it well enough to
Mm.
communicate some aspect of what's going on to people outside. And that's what's rare. What's rare is to be able to, you know, follow someone on the creative journey
Mm.
and get the hints you need, maybe the miles to understand some of the mileposts in your own internal space. That's why I love these kinds of things, because they help me figure out, not so much define or map again what's going on inside, because I don't think that's really what's important. They just help me navigate, or they point out or help me find or realize that there's another whole thing over here, or there's this intersection. It's not a three-way street. It's a four-way intersection. I've just never paid any attention to that. Or I keep coming back to the same milepost over and over again. There must be some reason why I keep coming back to this one thing over and over again. Um, oh, that's the thing that I forgot.
See there?
And it relates to all of this. I do tarot readings, not
Mhm.
because I believe that tarot have some sort of magical qualities or anything, although they certainly seem like they do. They're just so rich. And that's that there's so much there that, lots can be done with it. And I think dreams are sort of like this too. They're material that's meant to be not totally interpreted,
Mm.
right? But they can have a strong influence, especially when there's a strong emotional cord running through them, right? They're meant to pull on something, right? I went back and noticed, because I write down the tarot readings, and I just was flipping through them and was not spending much time on those because they're not meant to do anything. They use them to just shake things up.
Mm.
I do a reading, and I don't use it to try to predict the future or interpret my present. I use them as a set, as somebody, as if someone was talking to me and said, um, that conversation you had with so and so, it was really about this. That might be totally wrong, totally false, but I may not have thought about it that way.
Yeah.
And so I use them like that. I use them as another point
Kind
of
of
view,
shake
another,
you up.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I use them as another point of view, another other perspective that's not one I would have
Yeah.
thought of on my own. So, but the weird thing is that there's been one tarot card that has come up over and over again in the same spot. There are
Mm.
10 spots in the reading places the cards get placed. It's come up in the same spot over and over again, like 3 times. The odds against this are extremely high. And it's the Ace of Cups, and it's the Ace of Cups reversed every time, always upside down, which is basically that the cup is turned upside down and it's empty.
Yeah, it falls out.
And it's all about me not keeping my well full. It's about me draining myself over and over again because I've
Mm.
done it over and over again the last several years. I've just drained myself over and over again and didn't realize I was doing it. I go back through the journals and it's like I'm doing all this interior work and it's rich and beautiful and there's artwork going on. And then I suddenly I get to a page and it's like the journaling is completely different. It's all this, what do I want? I've got to figure this out. I've got to turn. I'm all up in my head, all completely in my head. And it goes on for like 2 months like that. And I'm like, what happened to you, dude? And I read like, who wrote this? And I recognize both of these writings as being very much me. And I'm like, why not? How do I not realize that I've made that shift? And how do I not notice that I'm suddenly, you know, Mr. Hyde instead of Dr. Jekyll? And I'm flipping through, and then I get back to, that there's another set of imaging and dialogue work and journaling work. And then, 2 weeks or so after that, artwork starts again and stuff. And I'm like, it's the pattern is so obvious,
Mm.
and yet I'm so completely unaware of it when I make the switch. And I'm so miserable when I'm in my head.
And I wonder at the how much of this is the natural cycles of this of
Maybe.
life? How much of
Yeah.
this is winter, spring, summer, fall,
Yeah.
winter, spring, summer, fall? Maybe it's supposed with bunny ears to be like this. Maybe you cannot be
Huh.
in the thing the entire time. Maybe you need to fall back into up to your head for a bit to be able to it's like I don't know.
I don't either,
um
but there's a point that's really important. I had not even thought about it. You know, again, maybe it's just like the mask, right? It's not something I'm supposed to fix.
no, precisely, what if it isn't something you're supposed to fix? What if this just is?
If it's just a natural cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if I could just get better at being relaxed, whichever place I'm in.
Yes.
The
Yes.
expression that I've heard is if I could quit kicking at the goads.
It I think it's one of those. um I wonder if I haven't said this to you before, but a couple of years ago, when was probably when I was going through my second divorce, or actually a couple of years before that. It's like I have come to a place within me where I can feel that I am fine, regardless of the external circumstances,
Mm,
regardless if there's a divorce or there's no money or, something going on, some type of drama or, whatever. It's like, even in those cases, I am fine. Which 10 years prior, no way would I have been able to feel that innate sense of well being that I believe is always and already there. But again, feeling it, connecting to it, being aware of those connections and making sure that those connections are strong and vital and vibrant. And that means that regardless of what goes on, in life, in family, at work, in the neighborhood, in the country, in the globe, you know, there's this strong sense of it's fine. I am fine. I can be calm. Um, which kind of links to this thing that you're saying now. It's like, regardless if you're in your up in the head period
yeah.
or really doing the internal work and then having the paintings, the art come from there, you can be fine. Um, knowing that it will shift because it always shifts. Everything shifts. Nothing is permanent, period. It's like it just doesn't work
Yeah.
that way
No.
because permanence, it actually doesn't exist.
No, it does
We
not.
think it does, but it doesn't exist. Everything is in some type of transformation and movement. I mean, even the glass panes are slowly, right, in
Yeah.
movement. It doesn't appear to be. My table feels really solid. Yeah, it's not
No, it's
actually.
mostly space and then
It's mostly space. There is movement there. There's little electrons going around and doing stuff, being. So, yeah,
yeah.
maybe that's a good place to end it.
Yeah, it is a good place to end it. And I have a few minutes of things I need to do just before 7, actually. So
See?
perhaps we should stop here.
Perfect.
So
Yeah, we should. Thank you for today.
thank you for today. As always, these are powerfully insightful to me. Just like this, like I said, right? It's that
The
a moment for that crisscross to happen. So cool additional things can be brought to light in between. So
Yeah, which I think is why I love people
yeah,
because it puts me in the way of somebody else so that the colors that I am at the moment all of a sudden turn purple,
right.
because I'm red and you're blue. And it's like, wow, now there's purple. Just totally shifts. It's fun.
Yep.
So I wish you a lovely day
And you too. And a happy new year.
and a happy new year. Yeah, because we are recording this before New Year. It's
Yep.
true.
All right.
So see you
Thank you.
around.
All right. Bye, Helena.